Imagine for just a second that you're sitting in the velvet seats of a grand concert hall. The lights are totally dimmed. Down in front of you is a massive symphony orchestra, and they're playing with such raw intensity that you can literally feel the floor vibrating under your feet. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we are jumping straight into one of the most profound, visceral experiences you can possibly have with live music. We're going to unpack a very specific, overwhelming feeling today, something one listener perfectly described as a deep national sorrow, and we're going to decode exactly how a composer can reach across centuries to make you feel it so intensely. So think about this. Have you ever been completely engrossed in a piece of art, maybe a story or a piece of music, and it's building up this massive, rolling energy, and then it just stops? Not a happy ending, not a neatly tied bow, just a sudden, jarring halt. It literally leaves you suspended in midair. You're just left sitting there in the silence, your heart pounding in your chest, wrestling with this heavy, lingering melancholy. Well, that specific feeling of unresolved tension and deep collective mourning, that is exactly what we're dissecting today. And this whole investigation was actually sparked by a brilliantly observant question from a listener. They were sitting there listening to the thunderous opening of Johannes Brahms' Fourth Symphony, and they asked, wait, is the violin part here similar to the violin in Bedřich Smetana's The Moldo? Now, on paper, a heavy German symphony and a sweeping Czech symphonic poem are two totally different beasts. But this listener's ear caught an incredibly powerful musical ghost connecting the two. Part 1. The Mysterious E Minor Connection. So what exactly is this shared musical DNA? Why do these two famous masterpieces trigger the exact same nostalgic, melancholic reaction in our brains? Well, it all starts with the key of E minor. You see, in classical music, E minor isn't just sad. It's not a gentle tear rolling down your cheek. E minor is an epic color. It carries this unique, flowing sense of tragedy. It's the color of a dark rolling river or a heavy, inescapable fate. When a composer picks E minor, they are automatically painting on a canvas that tells your subconscious, get ready for something monumental. When we put these two melodies side by side, the contrast is actually fascinating. Look at how these composers use that E minor canvas. Brahms builds his melody using these downward leaping thirds. It sounds exactly like a giant, heavy sigh, and it's played in a very strict marching 2/2 time. But Smetana, he uses smooth, stepwise motion in a wavy 6/8 time. He's literally mimicking the continuous sweeping flow of the Vltava River. But here is the crucial point. Despite those big structural differences, they share the exact same underlying texture. Both of these masterpieces rely on a dominant, singing violin section that sits right on top of an arpeggiated accompaniment. Think of those rapid rolling notes bubbling underneath the main melody. In Smetana, it sounds like the bubbling of the river. In Brahms, it's this restless, anxious fluctuation. And it's that shared texture that creates an instant déjà vu effect in your ear. Section 2. The Munich and Czech Clash. Now, notes on a page are really only half the story, right? The actual magic happens live in the concert hall. Our listener heard both of these pieces performed live by two legendary orchestras, and the difference was staggering. The Munich Philharmonic, conducted by Lahav Shani, played Brahms with this deep, dark, incredibly heavy German-Austrian tone. It evoked this feeling of a fallen empire, a true national brokenness. Contrast that with the Czech Philharmonic under Semyon Bychkov playing Smetana. Even though they are playing in the exact same melancholic key of E minor, their transparent, warm wood tones evoked national glory and fierce resilience. So why did Brahms suddenly sound so much like Smetana to our listener in that moment? It's because conductor Lahav Shani pushed the Munich Philharmonic to play with such extreme depth and absolute darkness. He expanded Brahms' personal sigh into a massive collective sorrow. When the width of the tragedy gets pushed to that extreme, it perfectly matches the width of the river that the listener already associated with Smetana. It's a profound psychological link. Moving on to Section 3, the emotional map of the symphony. Let's dive right into the listener's vivid imagery from sitting in that darkened hall. Look at this beautiful narrative timeline they put together. For them, Movement 1 isn't just notes on a page. It's dark whirlpools and rolling fade. Movement 2 is the quiet, still peace of morning dew in a valley, which is suddenly interrupted by a dark, creeping unease. Movement 3 is the protagonist struggling, desperately trying to climb upwards in pitch blackness. And finally, movement 4 is a broad, deep valley filled with violently alternating storms and piercing sunlight. This is exactly how strict musical structure transforms into a thrilling, visceral survival story in our minds. And speaking of that final movement, we have to talk about how it's actually built. Brahms uses something called a passacaglia. Now, a passacaglia is an ancient, cyclical dance form, and it's built on a constantly repeating theme. By using this theme over 30 times in the finale, swinging wildly between roaring brass storms and then just isolated, lonely flute solos, Brahms is essentially building a sonic cage. It represents an inescapable destiny. You can run all you want, but the cycle always repeats. Section 4. The Hero's Loneliness and Fate. This brings us to the philosophical core of the symphony, and honestly, the core of what makes Brahms so utterly unique. There is this incredibly powerful phrase in the listener's notes. Those who are capable would do the same despite the doom. Wow. This defines a very specific, introverted type of heroism. This isn't the hero who charges into battle knowing for sure they're going to win. No, this is the hero who looks out at the deep valley, sees the rolling storms, knows the war is already lost, and decides to fight beautifully and fiercely anyway. Just look at the stark contrast here between two absolute musical giants. When you listen to Beethoven, his music is all about conquering fate, right? It's extroverted. It's a triumphant victory. The music literally screams, "I will win." But Brahms is so different. His Fourth Symphony is deeply introverted and fatalistic. It's entirely about fighting in that dark valley, maintaining your dignity and your structure, even while fully knowing the destructive end is coming. It is a profound, incredibly lonely kind of heroism. And finally, Section 5, the melancholy of the abrupt ending. This leads us right to the shocking climax of this whole explainer. Why does this ending jolt your system so hard? Brahms builds up all this unbelievable tension in the passacaglia, and right when your brain expects a grand resolution, maybe a victorious major chord, he just cuts it off. There is no fifth movement coming to save you. He drops the guillotine right at the absolute highest point of energy. He completely refuses to give the audience a cheap, happy ending summary, leaving you totally stranded in a massive void of silence. It is an emotional ellipsis. It's not a period. Actually, the cutoff is so abrupt that our listener had this fantastic, genuine reaction. As the music just slammed to a halt, their first thought was literally, "Hey, conductor, did you forget to turn a page?" That is exactly how incredibly effective Brahms' strategy is here. He drags you all the way to the edge of the cliff, and then he just turns the lights out. But the live experience didn't actually end there. Imagine you're sitting in that heavy, breathless silence. You desperately want a resolution. So why on earth would conductor Lahav Shani follow this profound national sorrow with a lively, toe-tapping Hungarian dance as an encore? Honestly, at first glance, it seems completely contradictory, doesn't it? But Shani's choice is actually a total masterclass in psychology. Step 1, he didn't just play it fast and happy. He deliberately slowed the dance way down to extend that lingering melancholy. Step 2, he created this incredible frozen time illusion, pausing dramatically to mirror the abrupt stop of the symphony you literally just heard. Step 3, by doing all of this, he provided a bittersweet, beautifully layered transition back to reality. He didn't try to erase your unresolved feelings with cheap joy. He validated them. He gave you a rich piece of dark chocolate to follow a very heavy black coffee. Which brings us to the end of our explainer today. Next time you're experiencing a piece of art, whether it's a symphony, a great movie, or a book, and it unexpectedly just stops, denying you that tidy ending and leaving you with a lingering, unresolved melancholy, what's your reaction going to be? Will your first instinct be to want to hit the conductor? Or will you pause, sit in the silence, and truly appreciate the profound, lonely beauty of that Brahmsian shock? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me today, and keep your ears open.